under the JFK Assassination Information Center in Dallas, Texas. The center was founded in 1989 for three purposes. One, to have a place for people to come and tell what they knew about the assassination. Two, to exhibit the information we found out. And three, to investigate the case of John Kennedy's murder in 1963. Through our investigation, we have two major files we're going to talk about today concerning the Carousel Club and Jack Ruby. The first file deals with Beverly Oliver, who knew Jack Ruby and was in the club and saw David Ferry, Lee Harvey Oswald, and Jack Ruby together. The second file is going to deal with attorney Carol Jarnigan, who was with one of the strippers in the club and overheard a conversation between Jack Ruby and Lee Harvey Oswald.
Oliver, better known as the Babushka Lady. She has a story to tell about Dealey Plaza, about Jack Ruby, about the events that happened on November 22nd and after. Beverly, first of all, let's start at the beginning. You actually knew Jack Ruby and talked to him with him before the assassination. Could you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Yes, Jack owned the Carousel Club, and I was the singer at the Colony Club, which was separated only by a parking lot. And Jack and I became fairly close friends over the years that I worked down there prior to the assassination. And between shows, our shows were staggered. I would go over to Jack's club to visit with Jack and Shari Angel and later on, of course, Jada. And it was there that Ruby, about 2 weeks prior to the assassination of President Kennedy, introduced me to a friend of his sitting at a table. He said, "Beverly, this is Lee Oswald. He's with the CIA. He's my friend."
Could you describe this man?
Well, he was, my best description of him is that he wasn't particularly good looking. He was in sort of a dark, maybe not foul, I don't know what the word would be, malevolent mood. And didn't look like he had any money, so there wasn't much for me to talk to him about.
Right. Did he identify pretty much with the Lee Harvey Oswald that was arrested later on November 22nd?
The man that I met in Jack Ruby's club was the same man that was killed in the basement of the police station on Sunday after the assassination.
Right. In subsequent conversations with Jack Ruby, did he ever bring the name up after the time you seen him?
Well, I saw this man in the club 2 or 3 times after that on different occasions, but never spoke to him.
But he was more or less by himself or
Just there in the club, you know. Jack would talk to him, and one time there was a couple of other guys that was sitting at the table, but no one that I recognized.
Right. But in your mind, you are positive that Jack Ruby did know the Harvey Oswald before the assassination?
I am absolutely positive that Jack Ruby knew Lee Harvey Oswald, the man that was killed in the basement of the police station prior to the assassination.
Okay. Moving on a little further, could you relate to us a little bit about how you happened to be in Dealey Plaza that day, how you happened to have your camera with you?
Well,
Events leading up to that.
I had a new experimental camera that had been given to me by a friend of mine, and knowing that the president was going to be down here that day, I had been out partying all night, and so decided that I would go down there and take my camera and take pictures. Well, I parked in the parking garage that was to the left of our club, which we buy, everybody that worked down there bought monthly parking spaces. So we could park there anytime, day or night, for the same charge. Leave your car there 2 or 3 days, it didn't matter. And I had left my car there overnight, so when I came back on a taxi, I had a taxi drop me off at the parking garage, and I got my camera out of my makeup kit. It was in my makeup kit. I got it out, I put the film in it. I put on my flat shoes and grabbed my all-weather tan coat because it looked like it was going to rain, and started walking down Commerce Street and looking down the side streets trying to find a place where there wasn't a lot of people because I wanted to take good pictures with this new movie film.
Commerce Street was also the place that Jack Ruby's club was located.
Yeah, the Colony Club and the Carousel were just directly across from the Adolphus Hotel on Commerce.
How far from Dealey Plaza, approximately?
I don't know exactly, probably 10 blocks.
Yeah.
And so I started walking and I would look down the side streets. And of course, the streets were just lined with people. And I guess I really wasn't expecting that many people to show up. But I kept walking and kept walking. Well, then when I got about 2/3 of the way there, I decided, well, you know that grassy place down by the overpasses. I didn't know it was called Beverly Plaza. I had never heard it called the grassy knoll. It was just that little grassy spot down there by the triple overpass. Yeah. And so I just headed down there and walked across Houston Street and cut across there to the site. And was standing there, and there was an electricity in the air that day. You could just feel the excitement. It was just like, almost like static electricity. It was like if you touched somebody, they were going to spark. It was, unless you were there, there's no way to describe the excitement that was in the air. And I mean, I was fixing to see the President of the United States, and he was going to come right by me.
Yeah, you were standing on the left side of Elm Street, opposite of the
Zapruder.
Zapruder.
And I mean, it was just, since that time, I've never experienced a feeling like that. It was just, everybody down there, I guess, felt the whole thing. I mean, the President of the United States, the most charismatic president we had ever had in our life, was fixing to drive right in front of us.
I've talked to other people that said also the fact that Jackie was winning.
Yeah.
Air of glamour to the whole thing,
Yeah.
so
Well,
quality.
I don't mean to be rude, but he didn't need Jackie for glamour.
Oh, okay.
he was glamour of his own and excitement of his own. And were you gonna answer the question?
Yes, I was gonna ask you, when I talked to Jean Hill, she said the area that she was standing in, originally they didn't want anyone on that side. And she came up at the last minute, therefore they didn't ask her to leave. I was curious.
Well, she was there when I got there, and I didn't have any problem getting, I just walked across there. I walked across Houston Street, you know, crossed over Main, crossed over Houston, and walked across that grassy area down to actually just a little, I don't know what the directions are, but a little to the left of Jean Hill and behind her, and there was a man and his son standing in front of me to my right.
Probably Charles Brown.
I think that's who it was.
Okay, now, when did you actually start filming?
Well, to make sure that I had a feel of the camera, I started filming the crowd and up and down the street and taking pictures of the buildings and stuff because it had a zoom on it, and I had never used a zoom before. So I was just filming things around me, and then just waited, turned the camera off and waited. And you could tell when the president was coming because you could hear the people, you know.
Right.
So when I hear the crowd and realize that the president is probably just about to turn onto Houston Street, I turned the camera back on and I began to film. And when the motorcycles turned the corner, you know, it was thrilling. It was very thrilling. And I wanted to take my camera down and look, but I also didn't want to miss any of it on film. You know, I didn't want to miss any of it.
Well, I was gonna ask you about that. When the first shot was fired, most people said it sounded like a firecracker. Did you have the urge to pull the camera down?
No, because you know what it sounded like to me? And of course I have relived this experience for almost 30 years now. At least once or twice a week in my dreams. And I don't know how old you are, you may be too young to remember these, but when I was a child or growing up and at that time,
We're about the same age.
they had some little round things that were about the size of a garden pea, and you threw them on the ground and they popped. And that's what it sounded like, but pop, pop.
Okay, I thought it sounded louder than that, possibly.
Well, it might have been, but I mean, to me, where I was standing, this is what it sounded like. It was like pop, pop, and it was like maybe close enough. See, that's what I'm saying. It was like some little kid maybe, I don't know if I thought the little boy in front of me had thrown these down on the ground or what. And I thought, you know, that's really weird somebody let their kids bring something like that down here.
I think they were called pop rocks, I do remember.
Yeah, I think that's what they were, pop rocks. And I couldn't believe someone would let their kid bring something like that down there. And that just kind of passed through my mind, and I didn't think anything. You know, I just continued to film. And then the president's car went by, and I'm by now at this angle. And then there was this boom, boom type sound, and
A lot louder than.
oh, a lot louder. I mean, I'm still not sure I realized at that point it was a gun. I don't know what I thought it was. I mean, I don't remember thinking. But in the viewfinder of my camera, President Kennedy goes back against the car like this.
Sure.
And the whole back of his head looked like someone had taken a bucket of blood and just threw it out the back of his head. It was horrible. And Jackie pulled him this way and took her hand and pushed him down, crawled over the back, and got something white off of the trunk of the car, and then pulled the man, which I assumed at the time was one of their agents, up into the car, and they sped off. And I stood there in shock filming this. I don't even know when I turned the camera off. I might have even left it running after I put it down. I don't know, because I was in absolute shock. And everybody around me was laying on the ground. And here this dumb blonde is standing up with a camera in her hand.
With it zoomed in, you might have had a better view of it through the camera than.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, and that zooms then, Robert, it was just like you were sitting right here and somebody shot you in the back of your head went off. It's a horrible nightmare that's repeated week after week after week for 30 years of my life.
Have you ever considered where the fatal headshot might have come from?
Oh, I have no doubt in my mind that the fatal shot came from about 20 or 30 feet down that picket fence, from behind that fence. And no one will ever convince me. I'm not going to say that the president was never shot from the back. I don't know. But I do know that the shot that killed him came from, like we're standing here from this direction, and looked like it probably hit him about here, and his head went back, and then this massive amount of blood and tissue just went flying.
Getting off the subject just a little bit, you know, the Journal of American Medical Association has recently come out with people trying to defend the Warren Commission, saying all shots came from behind. Do you know why they might, in your own opinion, why they would say that? And we have so many credible witnesses saying the shots came from the front, and also the fact that the Zapruder film does show his head going back and to the left, just as you explained before.
Well, you know, usually the reason that people lie about anything is because they have something to hide.
I just wanted your opinion, just for my sake.
And I don't know who it is, and I don't know who the they are, but somebody has something to hide. And it's not me.
Well, I know that. I think it's a lot easier to say that one single person did it opposed to conspiracy type thing, or whatever, you know.
Having to admit.
Right, now, going on a little further, after you finally did stop filming, could you just walk us through the events that happened after that?
Well, everybody, and when I say everybody, I mean everybody that was in my visual range, ran across the street, up the hill, you know, like they were chasing somebody. I'm not a person who goes and just walks into crowds, and being an entertainer, that just, I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but I still won't like walk up to a group of people and walk into a crowd. It's just out of my character. And I kind of waited and watched what was going on, and then I kind of moseyed across the street. And, you know, there's stairs coming down, and there's landings in those stairs, and I think it was about the second landing that I went up there and stood on and watched these people that were gathering. And I saw people talking to people, and then I'm facing the opposite. See, I don't know the directions down here, but I was facing, my back was to the triple underpass, and I'm looking at these people.
Triple underpass would be west.
Okay, I was facing east then, and I was watching this group of people, and about here, right in my peripheral vision, someone caught my eye, and I looked up, and it was a man that I knew to be married to a woman who worked for Jack Ruby as a hostess named Geneva White. To me, I knew him as a policeman. He had a Dallas police uniform. That day, I don't recall him having a hat on. His hair was disheveled. But you see, I would not have thought anything about that because he should have been down there. In my opinion, the whole Dallas Police Department should have been down there. And then I saw another policeman walk from somewhere behind like the pagoda area, I don't know what you call it, that white concrete wall thing, and kind of walk down and into the crowd. Well, I knew that Geneva White's husband had made eye contact with me, and I knew that he recognized me. Well, at this time, I'm getting really anxious to know what happened. And I have to admit there was a little fear there. Why, I don't know. To this day, I don't know why I have felt threatened and fearful for 30 years. But I have, and I still do.
Could have been the way that he looked at you. I'm sure you're referring to Pastor Roscoe.
Yeah. Yeah, but I say that I knew him as Geneva White because until recent things were disclosed, I did not remember his name was Roscoe. But yes, Roscoe White is the same man I saw. And no, I don't think that had anything to do with it because I really didn't have any reason to be afraid of a Dallas police officer. None.
Okay.
But in knowing that he recognized me and knew who I was, gave me the freedom I felt to leave. Because if he wanted to talk to me, they knew who I was and knew where to find me. So I practically, in a run, back down to where my car was parked because I wanted to get to radio. I wanted to hear what was being said.
Sure.
And all the way down there, I was just hoping that someone else had been hit. It really wasn't the president, but it really was, and I knew it. And I get in my car, and I start back out to Garland, where I was living, and I get on North Central Expressway just past the Holiday Inn, and the news came over that last rites had been given to President Kennedy. And I pulled over to the side of the road, and I cried for a long time. I didn't know how long.
You still had your camera with you all this time?
Oh yeah. And I had a habit of always putting it in my makeup kit. And so when I got to the car, I put it in my makeup kit. Well, I got home, and I was just extremely upset. And I went to sleep. I took 2 Tuinals and went to sleep. And sometime that afternoon, I don't know who it was, my brother worked at night, so he was getting up, and he came in and he said, Beverly, President Kennedy's been shot, he's dead. He said, did you go down there this morning? And I said, yes, Baba, I did. It's just a nightmare. It's just a nightmare. And went back to sleep. And then later on that day, Abe Weinstein called to tell us that he was going to be closing the Colony Club in mourning of the president. And I was grateful for that because there's no way I could have gone to work that night. There's just no way I could not have. So I went back to sleep, and the next day I got up and thinking that, probably Abe would open the club that Saturday night because Saturday night was our biggest night. I went on to the beauty shop and told the girl that did my hair, Barbara Perkins, that, I had been down there. And went back home. My mom wasn't working that day, and she started hounding me, wanting me to go take pictures of flowers down at Dealey Plaza. I said, Mother, I just don't want to go down there again.
Moving pictures of
No, well, whatever, just pictures. And I said, Mother, I really just don't want to go back down there. And finally she talked me into it. And so late that afternoon, we drove back down to the plaza. And I had left my makeup kit in the house. So the only camera I had was a little still camera. And I took that little still camera out and I took pictures, which Larry has here now. He has those pictures.
You took it?
At that day.
Okay.
And yeah, he has them. And but feeling like I couldn't go back down there, just go back down there. I don't know why. I stopped at a flower shop and bought a single red stem rose wrapped in green paper and laid it where I was standing.
Where was your movie camera all this time?
It was back in my makeup kit at home.
Okay.
Yeah, because I wasn't going anywhere to have to need my makeup kit. I was going to take my mother down to see the place where the president was killed. And so I didn't jerk my makeup kit and take it to the car. I just had my purse and my little still camera. And so I took the pictures, and it was about, well, we stayed there till dusk. Some of the pictures will show that it's, almost dusk. And came back home because I had called and said we were closing the club again. So that's why I decided to take her down there. And I took some more sleeping pills and I went back to sleep. And the next day when I got up and I flipped on the news, there was my friend, Jack Ruby, in the basement of the police department, blowing his friend, Lee Harvey Oswald, away. Of course, at that time, I did not know his name was Lee Harvey Oswald. I was just introduced to him as Lee Oswald. And that really confused me.
You just had a feeling of confusion, or?
I thought I'd been taking too many Tylenols.
Thought you?
I thought this is like a hallucination. This is not happening. So I laid back down and I slept for another 2 hours, and Abe called and said, we're closing the club again tonight. I said, why? He said, don't you know that Jack Ruby went into the basement of the police department and killed the alleged assassin of President Kennedy?
Of course, this was on Sunday, right?
Yeah, Sunday morning, but by now Sunday afternoon. And I said, really? He said, really? So I got up and I turned the news on again, and it really was. It was that guy that I had met a couple of weeks before in the Carousel Club and had seen a couple of times since then. And so that really confused me because Jack did have a violent temper. I was never the recipient of his anger, and I'm glad of that. But there was something in me that just had a hard time believing that he had just gone down there and killed that man.
For most people I talk to when they describe Jack Ruby, they all say he's a very, very nice guy, but he has the hair trigger temper, and he will throw you downstairs or punch you out or something like this.
But the thing about Jack is quickly as his temper flared, it went away. I mean, he was over it. Oh, I don't remember Jack ever really apologizing. He'd get mad if I were one of the girls or something. Well, instead of calling and saying, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that, he'd call and say, you coming to work tonight? Which was an apology from Jack Ruby. I don't know that the words I'm sorry ever came out of his mouth.
Okay, going on back to the camera, could you sort of fill us in around the time period and what exactly happened as far as someone actually taking the camera and the film from you?
Well, no, they didn't take the camera. On Monday night, I went to work at 7:45, which was my ritual. I showed up at 7:45, and our club had 2 flights of stairs. You went up a flight of red carpeted stairs, there was a landing, then you went up the second flight of stairs and into the club. And I got there and there was 2 men standing on the landing. And of course I didn't feel any threat or anything because there was always men standing on the landing. And so I just, I'm headed upstairs and I get there and one of them approaches me, a big tall guy, and he said, are you Beverly Oliver? And I said, yes sir, I am. He takes his identification out and he says, I am, and at the time I didn't remember his name, with the FBI. And I said, yes sir. He said, I understand you were down taking a movie film of the assassination of President Kennedy. And I said, yes sir. And he said, where's the film? I said, it's still in my camera. He said, where's your camera? I said, it's right here in my makeup kit. He said, you haven't had it developed? I said, no sir, I haven't. He said, we'd like to take those film and develop them and look at them, and then we'll get them back to you. I said, okay. So I'm getting real worried now because laid beside that camera in this makeup kit was a Prince Albert can full of marijuana. And knowing that Candy Bar just a few years before that had been sentenced to 15 years in the pen for less than half an ounce, and here I've got a whole pack full can of it in my makeup kit.
63 of the marijuana was also rough.
Yeah, a lot rougher. And there, I think if I open this makeup kit and this guy sees this Prince Albert can in there, well, he's gonna know I don't smoke Prince Albert. And so I stooped down and I put the makeup kit with a lid where it opened up toward him. And in the makeup kit, there's a little tray that holds like your brushes and your pencils and stuff. So to keep this man occupied, I handed him the tray, grabbed the camera out, put the tray back, and gave him the camera. And that way he didn't have a chance to like look at my makeup kit. So he opens up the camera, he takes the film out, he closes the camera, he hands it back, I lift the tray up, put it down in there, put the tray down, shut my makeup kit in, thankful to God he doesn't want to look at my makeup kit. And so I stand up and he said, well, Miss Oliver, we'll get these back to you in a few weeks. And I said, okay. Well, I was only 17 years old. I was not smart enough to ask for a receipt for the film. I had no reason to disbelieve. You know, I had no reason to doubt. This man had a legitimate identification that said he was from the FBI. What reason would I have to question his motivation? None.
Right. Plus, back in 1963, all of us were a little bit more naive. Somebody in authority or working for the government, you more or less did what they said.
That's right.
The question. Did you said he showed you the FBI
Identification.
From that, how did you finally remember who he might have been?
Well, it was in, I can't remember, it was late 69 or early 70. Gary Shaw came, it was I don't know if you want to go into all the details of how I got together with Gary Shaw or not. It was a real strange course of events.
I don't know if we have time, but
And,
briefly just...
Well, by accident, or by providence, whatever you want to call it, I was staying in his home in Cleveland, Texas, and was singing in a revival in his church. And that's the home that they put me in. And a friend of mine who was also singing there, named Jerry Wayne Bernard, I had talked to him for a long time before about where I'd been that day and the things that I had seen and what I thought. And so that night at dinner, he says to Gary Shaw, he says, why don't you tell Mr. Shaw where you were the day that President Kennedy was killed?
Okay.
So I'm thinking this is just an interested citizen like everybody else wanted to know. So I started telling him. Well, the more I talked, the bigger this man's eyes get. We retired to the den. And across the den is his library. And it's got the full Warren Commission volumes on it.
Right.
And I'm going, who is this guy that I'm talking to?
Right.
So then I start kind of not being so open with the things I was telling him because I don't know who this guy is now, you know. And then I met and married the man that I'm married to now, who's a preacher. And we were in a revival in a little town called Omaha, Texas. And Gary Shaw and I believe it was Larry Harris came out there and they brought 4 mug books. And Gary said, I want you to go through these mug books and pick out people that you know and tell us how you know them. So this took several hours, and I went through all these books and identified a lot of people. And we get to the picture of David Ferry, and Gary says, you know him? I said, yes. He said, who is he? I said, well, his name is David Ferry, and I said he was Jack Ruby's assistant manager at the club. I mean, people can say what they want to about whether David Ferry was ever in that club or not, but he was in there so much that in 69 or early 70, I still thought he was the manager or assistant manager to Jack Ruby's club.
Just a point of reference, David Ferry is from New Orleans, private detective type person, pilot, with an unusual appearance that you would easily recognize.
Yes, you would not forget David Ferry if you ever met him once. And so going through all these pictures and identifying these people and telling what I knew about them. In the 3rd book, now you understand this is a regular mug book. It doesn't say police officer under it, doctor, lawyer, Indian chief. It's just a mug book. And I get to the 3rd book, and lo and behold, here's this man. I said, this is the man who took my film. Gary said, are you sure? I said, I am positive. I had already given him a description of the tall guy with gray hair and the cleft in his chin. And here he is. He's in this picture. And I said, this is him. He said, how sure are you? I said, I am positive. This is him. And lo and behold, it was Regis Kennedy, an FBI man.
If you're talking about Regis Kennedy, who was an FBI agent stationed in New Orleans and who had done a lot of investigating on Paul Marcella, the so-called mafia figure, and it indicated from his investigations that he was more or less just a tomato salesman, something of this nature.
Well, he might have sold tomatoes on the side, I don't know, but that isn't what he did for a living.
Right, you're familiar with him?
Oh, yes. I became familiar with him during the marriage to my first husband, who was George Albert McGann, who was the alleged leader of, quote, the Dixie Mafia.
Okay. And you can go on from there about him taking the film, or?
Yeah, well, he just took the film and,
You didn't hear from him after?
never. And, you know, my first husband that I just mentioned, George Albert McGann, when we were married, Russell Douglas Matthews, Artie Matthews was the best man at our wedding. And, George used to call me a blonde bimbo every now and then. And he said, one night we were talking about the film and stuff, and he said, "You little blonde bimbo." And he said, "You're never gonna get that film back." And even as late as 67, I'm sitting there saying, "Yeah, they're gonna give me my film back one of these days," you know? I mean, I still believed that someday my film was gonna arrive in the mail to me and I would have it back.
You mentioned R.D. Matthews and your husband, former husband George McGann. Would you elaborate on them as to what type of business they were in over the years, if you would?
Well, they were tomato salesmen, just like Carlos Marcellus. They were tomato salesmen.
Okay, you can't go into detail about this,
Well,
about Dixie Mafia.
yeah. They, Captain Wolf Fritz came up with the term Dixie Mafia after my husband was assassinated. And they were, I hate to use the word mafia because I don't really know what that means, but they were part of a mob. And I met R.D. in Jack Ruby's club.
It's R.D. Matthews.
Yeah, R.D. Matthews and Jack Ruby's club in '63. And we were, one night in 1966, we were at the Alabama Club, and I saw R.D. there, and I went over there to speak to him, and he introduced me to George, and that's how I met George. And George, at the time of his death, was accounted with 19 murders, hits in the state of Texas.
So these weren't just very nice people.
They didn't just play cowboys and Indians, they were serious.
Alright. Anything else you want to add on to the story, or some things that have happened subsequent to it? I know you were involved in making of the JFK movie. You were one of the consultants for
Yeah,
that.
technical consultants or technical advisors, and that was a very healing experience for me because, as you know, Robert, until the time that I came up here to meet Oliver Stone, I had never been in this building. I had stayed away from all the controversy. I had stayed away from reading any books or watching anything about it because it's still very painful for me. I've only seen JFK once. I've never watched The Men Who Killed Kennedy all the way through, just the part that I was on. Nigel Turner, who filmed The Men Who Killed Kennedy, came to my home over Thanksgiving and tried to show it to me that I would get up and I would do this and I'd do that. And he said, "Come here, I want you to watch this." You know, I just cannot still to this day sit down and watch something that involves the assassination of President Kennedy, because to me, it's still a very vital, real part of my life. It's still a nightmare. It's not part of history to me. It happened yesterday.
What do you think about the people who are still researching this over the years? You mentioned Gary Shaw, others, Penn Jones, Mary Farrell, Larry Howard, and others. Do you think their quest is worth the effort, or?
Well, Robert, I'm not sure that we'll ever know all of the details of the assassination of President Kennedy. But as long as the subject is out before the public, they can never keep the inquisitiveness of the generations coming. And while we may not ever be able to really prevent anyone from killing a president, if they so decide that that's what they're going to do, maybe our country, because of the people like Larry Howard, Gary Shaw, Mary Farrell, Robert Roden, yourself, Coke Buchanan, maybe because of these people, and because of their quest, and because of their continued interest in research, and lives that have been spent, literally lives, have been spent to study the subject, then maybe a travesty such as the cover-up can never happen in our country again. Never. And never to the people of America. We deserve better than that.
Well, my personal note is I just want to thank you for coming and sharing your views with us. there are still witnesses out there who probably know something, who are afraid to come forward, and it takes a lot of guts and moxie to come forth and tell your story, because I imagine there's still some people out there that want to keep it in the same mode as what the Warren Commission said. I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Well, I would like to just say one thing. If you are out there and you do know something, and you live like I lived for 28 years, afraid to talk about it for fear of your life, you may be the person that's holding the key. You may be the person that's holding the answer to solving this. And you know, we're not going to be here very much longer. And we're the only ones who have the keys that unlocks the mystery. If you know something, come forward. Be brave. It took me a long time, and I'm glad I did it. It was very healing. And now, at least occasionally at night, I can go to sleep and wake up knowing that there's always a better tomorrow.